Evaluation Question 1. In what way does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? The first way in which I followed conventions of real media products was through the use of location. When producing my soap opera, we plan to use conventional locations in order for our production to appeal to our target audience. For example, we used locations such as a street and the interior of a house. We chose to incorporate these locations into our production as our target audience would be likely to associate these locations with a soap opera. My research into similar texts also supported this, as I was able to see that these locations were conventional of a soap opera. Some other locations I could have used that I found during research were a pub, cafe and local restaurant business. We featured internal areas of the house such as the living room, kitchen, bedroom and bathroom. This is mainly due to my target audience being familiar with and enjoying already existing soaps. We thought by including conventional locations into our production that our target audience would likely enjoy our production, as they are used to seeing these locations and will additionally be able to relate these locations included, as soap operas are mainly based on ordinary people's lives. The second convention we followed was costume. From previous research tasks, I found that soap operas often feature their characters wearing casual, loose-fitting clothes. Examples of this would be coats, jumpers and loose-fitting trousers. We thought it was a good idea to follow the conventional of casual, loose-fitting costumes, as it has previously made soap operas very successful. In our production, we dressed our characters similarly and additionally tried to follow character archetypes when doing this, for example, the costume of a bad boy. In order to follow the archetype of a bad boy, we dressed the character Jamie in dark baggy clothing. He wore loose-fitting jeans and a dark coat. The use of the dark-coloured clothing portrays him to be evil and suspicious. This helped us develop Jamie as a character, and we planned Jamie's character to come across as guilty and criminal. The dark clothing additionally portrayed him as the antagonist, as it hid his true identity. There were 4 main characters in our production, and each of them were dressed differently, according to their character profile. Another example was Sophie, who was supposed to look ordinary but naive, so therefore we decided to dress her in light blue jeans, a fluffy cardigan, and she wore flowers in her hair. I feel that costumes are an important way to portray each character to the audience, so the audience are therefore able to develop personal relationships with each character after a short period of the soap being aired. One of the questions I asked my target audience was based upon character types, and my feedback also allowed me to see that the audience could make out some of the character types I had planned to incorporate. For example, my first interviewee stated that she could clearly see the villain, a helpless friend, and the popular person. This was positive feedback, as it meant the inclusion of my characters through costume was successful and allowed the audience to see the characters we were trying to portray. A third way in which we maintained conventional elements of soaps was through the use of props. We decided we didn't need a vast amount of props, but we did make sure that the props we did use were conventional and reflected the genre of the production well, and would reflect and support the multi-strand narratives. For example, the props we included were a gun, drugs, alcohol, a mobile phone, a computer, and books. The inclusion of these props added to the conventions associated with soaps, thus creating a more dramatic feel to our trailer. We felt, because our audience were likely to be either explorers or strugglers, that we needed to include a variety of different props. For instance, we needed some mainstream props that appealed to a struggling audience base, and we additionally needed more elaborate props such as a gun and drugs that would appeal to audience members of a different nature, with different tastes and expectations. In order to make our production professional, and for us to be able to create a sense of verisimilitude for the audience, we needed to make sure that the props we selected were conventional. Once we had made sure they were conventional, we had to make sure the props chosen were relevant and appropriate for each of the characters. The audience would be able to affiliate these props with a soap opera, and therefore our production would be more likely to appeal to the target audience, as we are supplying what they expect to see. They may additionally be able to relate to some of the props being included, especially as they are young, for example the phone. The target audience will be able to relate to these props, especially the phone, as the characters in the production are mainly from socio-economic groups C1 and C2, and therefore they are likely to have the same possessions and material items as the audience. Consequently, the audience will feel as though they understand and feel part of the production themselves. My audience feedback suggested that they could tell we had included a villain through the use of a gun. This allows me to believe that I have been successful when including the correct props, as they are representing my characters in the correct way. My audience are decoding the messages we have incorporated into the production, and therefore are able to understand our narrative and the genre of our production without us having to make it too obvious. Another way in which we made our production conventional was through the use of camera work. I had completed a lot of research into already existing soaps and had particularly focused on the camera work they used throughout their episodes. After carrying out primary research in the form of observations, watching clips from already existing soaps, we decided to incorporate the use of close-up shots, mid-shots, long shots, and point-of-view shots, as well as a long take into our production. These shots tended to be used to create relationships between the audience and the characters, forming personal relationships and personal identity. An example of when we used these shots was a point-of-view shot at the party as the two characters walk in, and a close-up shot at the beginning of the production when Jamie is walking away from the camera. The close-up shot allowed the audience to become familiar with the costume of the characters in my soap, and additionally the point-of-view shot was included to catch their audience attention and to make them feel as though they themselves were being featured in the trailer. I felt that the inclusion of these different shots was successful as it followed the conventions I had found in other soaps, and additionally allowed the audience to see the facial expressions of the characters as well as their body language and relationships towards each other. This is typical within soap operas, as the narratives are based around each character's lives. It was important to me that this was portrayed correctly throughout our product so the audience understand our characters and storyline as best as possible. We developed forms within our media product, for example character types. As our audience are aged between 16 and 25, we had to adapt our character types to fit the characteristics of both our characters and the target audience. For example, we had to develop our characters so we could include aspects such as drinking. Usually in soap operas, drinking is seen within a pub. However, as our characters were young people, some of them would not be old enough to drink in a pub, and therefore we had to develop our storyline so that the characters were drinking illegally at a house party. The progressed storyline emphasises to the audience how dangerous a health risk drinking alcohol can be if it gets out of hand. For example, when Sophie comes downstairs at the end and witnesses Tilly lying dead on the kitchen floor. The use of young characters in this way is not usually typical, and therefore it engages the audience as they are interested in finding out more. As our target audience were so young, we did include just young character types, and this paid off as the majority of our target audience identified the audience of the trailer correctly. Most of them suggested that our target audience were young people, either teenagers or individuals in their early 20s. The genre theory I can apply to this is Steve Neal's theory of repetition and difference. He states that in order to have a successful production, you must ensure you keep some elements conventional and some elements of the production new and different. This can be applied to my production as I have kept some elements the same, for example, the conventional locations and character types, but have changed some elements of already existing soaps by including only young characters and adding some additional techniques within the camera work. Neal states that the audience don't want to see the production over and over again, and therefore he states audiences need some repetition in order for them to understand the genre and production that is being created, but also needs something different so the audience are enticed and excited by exploring something new. This supports the fact that my target audience come under the category of explorers when using psychographic grouping, as they like to experience new and interesting things. In addition, we developed our characters' ages. For example, we decided it would be a good idea to not be conventional in this way, and to make all of our characters young. Usually, soaps include a range of different characters of different ages. However, we wanted to give our soap a unique selling point, and therefore decided just to feature young characters, all between the ages of 14 and 20. This was difficult in some respects, as we needed to choose and adapt storylines to suit the lives of our characters, thus appealing to our target audience. For example, we included storylines such as homework, partying and meeting friends. Many members of our target audience will have experienced similar situations, and therefore it is likely that our soap is being aimed at the correct target audience. This point was proved by my target audience feedback. For example, my third interview stated that he could definitely relate to the characters featured in the production, as he had previously experienced some of the same situations in his own life, My other respondents said that they were able to relate because all of the characters were young and they therefore understood the storylines. Similarly, we developed the characters' costumes to appeal to our young target audience and to suit the character profile of each character. We dressed the characters in fashionable clothes that the target audience would additionally like and may also wear themselves. For example, Sophie wore ripped jeans and Tilly wore Topshop jeans and a modern top. Ben's character was dressed in a tracksuit, which may appeal to some of our male target audience, as they will be able to grasp what kind of characteristics each character was to portray. His tracksuit was Nike, and therefore this is creating brand awareness and is a form of intertextual reference. Nike is likely to be popular within my target audience, and therefore they will feel as though they can relate to this character. We use these costumes in order to create a sense of verisimilitude for the audience, and to show the audience that the characters' lives are very similar to their own. Lastly, we tried to challenge certain conventions of already existing soap operas. For example, the choice of our characters. We used all young characters and actors in our production, and this isn't very conventional. We chose to do this to make our production unique and to differentiate from the target audience of already existing soaps. We felt there were too many soaps that appealed to a similar target audience, for instance, EastEnders, Emmerdale and Coronation Street. For this reason, we chose to use characters between the ages of 14 and 20 to appeal to a young target audience. I feel that this was successful, as from our target audience research, some members of our group stated that they felt they couldn't relate to any already existing characters. By the inclusion of just young characters, I feel it is much more likely that the audience will be able to relate to at least one character in our soap. An editing technique that we included challenged the way in which already soaps are filmed, for example the inclusion of our 360-degree turn. We included this in an external location outside of Mel's house. This took place during the drug deal. It allows the audience to see the drugs, body language and facial expressions of the two characters. From reviewing other soaps, we felt that this could sometimes be really effective when applied at the right place during the soap. As our product was a trailer, I felt this would be a great way to show the facial expressions of both Jamie and Ben without them having to be active. The 360 we included surrounds the boys when they are in the middle of their drug deal. This isn't seen often in other soap trailers, however, I do feel our production has benefited from this editing technique as it has improved the continuity and has allowed the audience to further develop their personal relationship with two of the main characters. Furthermore, some aspects of the camera work were slightly unconventional. From my research tasks, I found that long takes are featured in soaps occasionally, however, they wouldn't be classed as conventional. The inclusion of a long take in our trailer was to allow the audience to see the locations included in the actual soap. Additionally, the long take took the audience from one character to the other without breaking continuity. For instance, the long take included Sophie coming down the stairs from her room, Tilly dead on the kitchen floor, and Jamie acting suspiciously round the side of the house. Showing this to the audience would allow them to grasp the concept of our soap and may also attract them into watching the soap once aired, due to being able to relate to the characters and locations. I feel this was successful as it improved the continuity of the production and additionally showed the relationship between some of the characters. Subsequently, the point of view shots throughout the production were a challenge to the normal forms and conventions associated with our genre of production. For example, during the party scene, it consisted mainly of point of view shots, for instance, drug taking, drinking, and entering the party. This isn't very conventional of already existing trailers. However, I felt that this was successful as it appeals to a young target audience and additionally allows the audience to see directly what the character can see. This can create realism and may make the audience feel like they are also involved within the production.